Hi, this is Dr. Nick. I'm the Incrementalist here with incremental insights for a better business and a better health.
And I'm Fred Golson with Accountable Health, here helping companies reopen during the COVID pandemic.
So, Fred, do you go to Starbucks?
I actually do, Nick. I love going to Starbucks. I try not to do it because it's a lot cheaper to make coffee here at home, which I do quite a bit of. but when I do have that little idea I'm going to Starbucks, I now do it with their app, order in advance, pay for it, walk in, it's ready, and I walk out. But interestingly, this week there was a story coming out of South Korea that you probably saw, talking about the Starbucks, and they actually had an outbreak there. And as we've discussed, as we look at reopenings and how companies look at this and some of the issues you face, their situation was an individual was in the Starbucks for about 2 hours, no mask, infected, and they ended up getting a rather large outbreak of 56 people is what has been reported in the press. They also had some interesting issues, and one, apparently the place recirculates the air, which we know is problematic, and I'm sure you'll get into that. And also interesting was the fact that those individuals who worked there were wearing masks, and none of them got infected. Again, pointing to the value of masks.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. Because if you think about it, so I guess message number one here is for those people going, it's my right not to wear a mask, you're protecting yourself. And, we've seen this repeatedly, but we also ask people to wear masks to protect others. So, it's a double bonus feature here. If you wear your mask, you're protecting me. And by the way, you're protecting yourself, which would be a really good thing. The recirculation of air is really intriguing to me because, quite frankly, if you look at most HVAC systems, says the physician that knows limited amount about HVAC, let's be clear, but my experience, certainly in the ones that I've had interaction, that's what we do. We do it to save money because you don't want to reheat and, reprocess external air that's either too hot or too cold. So this feels like we've got to make a big change to the HVAC. And I know you've looked at that in detail, Fred.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with HVAC. We've discussed it. You've looked at it as well. And essentially, you've got to pull in as much exterior air as you can. We talk about opening doors, opening windows, but certain systems can only handle so much before they will not be able to process the air, as you mentioned, and either get it to the right temperature, humidity, hot or cold. And so this whole idea is difficult for certain systems. And the other thing that Starbucks decided to do smartly with this, not only require a mask when you come inside, but they're going to reduce the number of people inside by 30%. So there may have been another issue with that. And I guess it really points to this thing. Inside, we know, is less safe. Limit your time in there. I, for one, would not go sitting into a Starbucks for 2 hours or any confined space for that matter until we begin to get a better sense of how we're handling this air and the infection rates are dropping around the place.
So I'm going to challenge that just a little bit and say, I refer back to my hair salon and the 150 odd customers and the 2 infected individuals who, God bless them, wore their masks, followed and throughout. So not just in public, but also in all of the areas, and not one infection. And you can say all the customers didn't spend time, but as one lady pointed out to me, gosh, I spend an awful lot longer than the 10 minutes that I go in for my haircut. So, I'm sure some people were spending long periods of time. And all the employees that were also exposed who were wearing masks, not one of them. So whilst I respect the idea that you can't spend extended period of time and you should limit it as much as possible, I don't think people should be quite as fearful of it.
That's a good point, Nick. And obviously, there's ways to reduce that risk, stay safer indoors, and function in there. As you begin to get further out in time, and obviously my risk perspective is different than another person's. I might say 2 hours is a bit much for me. An hour might be good, 45 minutes, whatever that is, and figure that out and allow ourselves to function and begin to do things. And obviously the data with the masks, whether it's the hair cutting or the Starbucks employees, is really showing the value of wearing some sort of a face covering.
Just to be clear, I couldn't make a coffee last 2 hours, just saying, but you know.
You get caught up in all the other computer work you're doing in there or the other stuff, or just checking the websites out and you're there for 2 hours. So fascinating issue. The other thing that came up this week in a similar vein is this whole concept of singing, which was problematic. We had these choirs and all these people got infected out in Washington State and other events where they're singing. And they actually now have done a study that shows it's not necessarily the singing that's bad, but as we would expect, and I'm sure, Nick, this just resonates with you clearly, it's how loud you do it, whether you're talking or singing, that creates that expelling of particles, et cetera, that ultimately is the issue and not the singing in and of itself. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think, that feels clear to me just based on the videos that I've seen of singing, speaking, as you, well, I mean, what is loudness? It's the expulsion of more air forcefully to create amplitude in the sound that emanates from our mouths. So that makes sense to me. I guess I'm not as surprised by that. And, hopefully that sort of allows us some thoughts and positive pathway on the way that we bring back some of these activities that I know are very important. I mean, singing is important to me in private because I wouldn't ever subject anybody to my singing. I've been told that very clearly by my family. I can't sing. So, yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, continue on.
But the thing that's really bothered me this week has been the temperature sensor that came up, and suddenly I'm finding that my temperature is being taken at my neck and my wrist, and what is going on here? And apparently there is a discussion online that these temperature sensors, they're passive sensors, people, so there is no radiation emanating from them, are causing problems and causing cancer. In one particular instance, damaging my pineal gland. Now, this particular gland holds particular sway for certain groups for a variety of reasons. It, as best as we understand whatever goes on in this thing, it's highly significant. But just to be clear, and I can't point in a way that's meaningful on this video, but it's back here, and it's right it's close to the brainstem where the spinal cord comes through the foramen magnum in the base of the skull, and right there's a bunch of things, and the pineal gland. Even with the best will in the world, we couldn't point any kind of radiation unless you've got some proton beam. So this is just wrong. It's not true, people. We can take temperatures and it's perfectly safe.
So you actually had somebody say to you, don't use these thermometers because of the pineal gland damage.
Yes.
And there's actually stuff out there of people discussing this issue.
I had to go and look it up. I couldn't even understand mentally. I couldn't get my anatomical brain around this to understand how. And it made me pause to think, wait a second, how do these sensors work? Well, they're passive sensors. Now, to be clear, occasionally you'll find ones that have a red dot, and that's a laser that's built in. They're mostly for the ones that you use for cooking, barbecues, so that you can do it at a distance and aim it. It's an aiming thing. It's got nothing more. And this is just not a problem, people, please.
So that amongst all of the other kind of wacky stuff that's out there talking about COVID and the conspiracy theories is just another one to add to that pile of stuff. Unbelievable.
So if it sounds like it's not true, it may well not be. Apply a little bit of intelligence. Please don't re-amplify this stuff, and go do a little bit of research and trust the prevailing content of scientific body of evidence. That's what we have to do.
Well, that's a great way to finish this one up, obviously, whether it's the body of evidence around wearing a mask or the body of evidence about it's okay to take a temperature with one of these probes. It's all good. And with that, this is Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health. It's been another fantastic week with you. Thanks, Nick.
And I'm Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist here with incremental insights for better business, better health.